We reached the halfway point here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, at least the halfway point of the 2023 season, I guess I should say. It is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. With you, as always, Jeff Chadiha, NFL Network, Eric Eager, Consumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be part of the conversation. Already got some of the best lining up. Beery Mister, Brad, Tina, all ready to rock and roll here in the chat room. We can see your comments. You can be a part of the conversation if you join us. We stream normally, and this might change next week, but normally Tuesdays at 8 p.m. here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. A lot to get to. Was this Germany trip a success for the Chiefs as a franchise? What do we learn about the game against the Dolphins? What do we learn about the Chiefs in that game? Can the Chiefs win a championship with this defense? Can they win a championship with this defense driving the boat? Is Trent McDuffie a Pro Bowl corner? What happened to Tyreek Hill? What's our level of concern with the offense? Have defenses figured out Travis Kelce now? How much can the passing game improve over the course of the next 8 games? What's our first half review look like? Biggest surprises, positively. Biggest disappointments? We talk about it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. We appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words as well. Kansas City Chiefs reached the midway point, gentlemen. They are at 7-2. They hold right now the number 1 seed in the AFC. No bye week for the Baltimore Ravens, who also only have 2 losses. So with a win, the Ravens would move a half game in front of the Kansas City Chiefs. But for right now, 9 games in, the Kansas City Chiefs sit atop the AFC. And the Chiefs, I don't know, do we call it survive in advance, Jeff, against the Miami Dolphins, 21-14. Listen, 354 yards a game the Dolphins were averaging coming in, 454 yards a game. They got only 292, 34 points they were averaging. They got only 14. Meanwhile, the Chiefs offense still against the Dolphins defense that hadn't been that good, but was probably their best addition. Did get a lot of their defensive backs over the last couple of weeks back into the lineup. 21-14. What's your takeaway? What'd you learn from the Chiefs and Dolphins?
I learned the Chiefs defense can't be a championship caliber defense. I think that's the first thing you got to take away from it, because as you mentioned, the numbers back that up. I was really impressed with how they played Tyreek Hill. I think some factors came into that we'll get into later in the show, but that was a huge, huge win for them in that regard. They got the big turnover, which is what, when you look at this game and how it played out, was the difference. And certainly not just the difference, but a huge momentum twist at a key point in that game that really put Miami behind the 8 ball in the second half. They had to rally, and they did, but they couldn't get it done at the end. And certainly, look, the offense is what it is. And for my money, I think at this stage of the season, we can all start saying that the offense is not going to be much better than what we've seen in the first 9 games. It's just, they're going to have to grind it out. They're going to have to win ugly. They're going to have to play to their defense to win a second straight championship.
Boy, Eric, I know you're probably chomping at the bit to get after that last statement. Let's come back to it, though, and start with just what was your biggest takeaway from the Chiefs and Dolphins?
I think the biggest takeaway is this team. This is a very, very good championship caliber football team. and they beat a pretty good AFC opponent while still exhibiting all of the flaws that we know that they have. On offense, Pat doesn't trust the wide receivers very much, and when he does, he throws a pillow pass to Valdez-Scantling. He's not able to hang on. It's not quite a drop, but it's not like he's going up and getting the ball like a true number one wideout would. I think the big thing is we went into this game saying this is an above average offense with a great defense. They played like a team with an above average offense and a great defense, and that was enough to beat a team who is the favorite to win the AFC East right now. Go ahead. Right. I disagree with Jeff in the sense that, I think that we have to be careful about saying this offense is way worse than historical offenses. It is, but the NFL environment has changed to an extent, right? Because they're still top 5 or 6 in the NFL in offense. It's just that offense in the NFL is incredibly depressed relative to what we're used to. And in a weird way, the whole league is zigged, and the Chiefs have zigged in front of the whole league by building a defense that can stop even the best offenses in the league, which is the Dolphins, for example. So it was a game where they still, like I said, exhibited their flaws, and were still able to win. And I think the score of that game was not quite as close as it looked on the field. Right, you had the turnover, you had the dumb Chris Jones penalty, you had all that stuff that kept it a 1-score game, when in reality they pretty much dominated that whole game.
You down with Dom? Because now it's like a tennis match. Let's go back to Jeff Chadiha, who I don't think saw domination. I'm betting.
I don't know the game out he was watching, but the second half didn't look like domination to me. It looked like the Chiefs couldn't move the football, and the Dolphins' offense got going. I mean,
Jeff, they drove the length of the field once in the second half of the game.
They scored 2 touchdowns. I don't care how far they had to go get touchdowns.
Patrick fumbled at the 20.
Whose fault was that?
But
they forced a fumble.
Yeah, but
I mean, then how do you describe? I hate to, we always end up 2 of us against one, one way or another. But you're just like the Tyreek Hill fumble is like, oh no, that's good defense, but the Patrick Mahomes fumble is
I'm saying
I'm on your side.
So all the defense dominated that entire game.
That's not true.
Flat out. The Dolphins were leading the NFL in a ton of offensive categories. Tua Tagovailoa had the highest passer rating in the NFL. Their run game, as far as EPA per play and all that, the most efficient in football. Tyreek Hill is on pace for 2,000 yards, and the Dolphins were able to drive to have a length of the field drive for a touchdown one time in that entire game. The second touchdown was bullshit, a fumble by Mahomes, and when the Dolphins got the ball in Chiefs territory, they went backwards, and only because Chris Jones, dumbass, went up to and pushed some guy did they even get into scoring range again. Let's not. I get that the Chiefs had a fumble return for touchdown, so you can cancel those out, but cancel those out then. Then the game ended 14-7, and this team is exactly the team that we were talking about, a team who's struggling on offense and who has an elite defense. And in this case, elite defense kicked the crap out of elite offense. This Chiefs team, they gave up – let's even give them that second PS touchdown.
What did you see, Soren?
14 points to the Dolphins.
14-7.
70 against the Denver Broncos. They scored 20 in a game when they got their ass kicked by the Bills, and the Chiefs held them at 14 points.
Listen, on
our
2 Deep NFL podcast, we'll get into the Dolphins a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, I can't even say I'm in between you. I think I'm sitting next to Jeff on the couch here. Just because it feels a little bit like you're like I said, I go back to you said, oh, Chris Jones had a stupid penalty. Well, that's not the first time we've seen that. I mean, we've seen him get critical penalties at critical moments in the game before. This is not new. So acting like that's just a one-off, that's not fair.
Here are the Dolphins' total offensive yards this season: 536, 389, 726, 393, 524, 224, 244 against the Eagles, 390 and 292 against Kansas City, including 175 through the air, Petro. 175 through the air. That's a dominant defensive performance by Kansas City. It's just flat out. And that's what we said this entire podcast is this offense is sputtering. This defense is elite. And this defense, no Nick Bolton, the middle linebacker that everybody wants to make into Dick Butkus around here. And a penalty that like set them back. This defense 2 years ago, if Nick Bolton was injured and Chris Jones had a penalty like that, would have given up 40. And now we're talking about 14 points, and all of a sudden this isn't a dominating performance. They kicked the crap out of the Dolphins offense.
Listen, again, I just hear like, my frustration, like I'll take your comment that you just said about the linebacker. You don't get to call him Tracy Simeon, which is not a compliment, and then cite like, oh, they played without him. Like, you don't get to be like, he's not very good. And be like, oh my God.
Tracy Simeon is a fine linebacker. I'm just saying that they played short-handed.
You do not mean it that way. That's
L'Jarius Sneed goes out. L'Jarius Sneed goes out. They're like second or third best defender. He goes into the tent and they score a touchdown on defense the next play. This team's defense is a wagon, and we all want to talk about Mahomes and everything. They're inversely correlated. You can't have Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, Leo Chanel, George Karlaftis, Chris Jones. You can't have the defense with 11 really, really, really good players and be like, whoa, their wide receivers stink. It's for the last 5 years, we've been like, this offense is a wag and the defense sucks. This is a great football team. And they won an impressive game against a pretty good AFC opponent.
I mean, what are you wanting Eric and I to say, I guess? Are we supposed to say that, wow, the Chiefs kicked the holy living crap out of the Dolphins? These two teams aren't even close. The Chiefs aren't going to lose another game. They're going to win the championship. Like, what are you wanting us to say?
I think we have a sour taste in our mouth because of the way the game ended. And I get that. I don't want it to obscure from the fact that they dominated that game.
I just, and I'll get out of the way just because I feel like Jeff asked me a question and I've gotten maybe 2% of the answer.
Sorry.
It's all right. You're all fired up. Everybody loves it. How many things have I put up there? EE coming out hot. I love it. Yeah. Right? People love it when you're all fired up. I just get out of the way and let you burn, buddy. Listen, I do think there's something should be said here. Is that Jao? I apologize for not understanding how to pronounce with the symbol over the A. The analytics guy became defense wins championships. I mean, I guess that's a little bit of my, where I'm like, where are you coming from on this? Because I have sat here and I'm with you. I look, can they win? Yes. And Jeff admitted they won. And Jeff talked about it being a championship defense. I mean, I think we're always much closer than it sounds like when we piss and moan at each other. And I think we are closer here, and we're arguing about this little distance in this spot. We all think the defense is good. We all think that's a good thing. But I just, for me, I don't understand how you can be for 4 years like the defense doesn't matter when it's not good, and now be like when the offense is not as good, still good in the NFL, still top 10, still good enough to win a championship. We all agree. But I don't know how you can't say like, listen, what we're seeing here is a great defense. But the Dolphins are still just one, play a ball off a guy's helmet up in the air, catch it and run it back for 6 away from tying that game. And then it's anyone's game. And so that's the thing is like you have to win 3. And if they don't get the 1 seed, 4 in a row against quality opponents. And if you leave every one of those opponents nipping at your heels by 3 points, you open yourself up for just a little bit of the bad variance.
I agree with you 100%. And I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that they should even be favored, although our model, sumersports.com/league/table, would make them the favorite. My thing is, and you're 100% right. I've talked in 2020, the average NFL game through 9 weeks had 50.6 points. The average NFL game this year has 43.4 points. So the NFL is different now than when we had the same discussions 4 years ago, right? Like to win in the NFL, the offense back like the Chiefs have right now would not cut it, right? The other thesis I have is like you're middle of the season, and I think actually this is the calculus the Chiefs have. You're middle of the season. And if your defense stinks, you got to plug like 6 holes to get it better. When the offense isn't quite going at full strength, you need the best player in the entire league to elevate the play of those around him. I like that gamble. That's my take. I'm not going to sit here and say the offense is playing well. I'm saying I think there's a path to playing well.
Jeff, unless you want to fire back on that, because I got one for you. You got a response to that? Well, it's new ground. So do you have a response?
No, go ahead. Yeah, we'll keep going round and round on the same topic.
I think probably so. Somebody brought up the point, like, this offense, and here it is. RJ said to suggest this all-time offense is not going to improve is kind of asinine. We have no reason to believe otherwise. Well, in previous years, not. But if I were high school debate, it's like argue this side, I would say, well, there's no Tyreek Hill, right? That's still, and I know everyone's like, well, they didn't have Tyreek Hill last year. I know, but they had Juju Smith-Schuster and McCall Hardman. You still miss Tyreek Hill. As long as you don't have Tyreek Hill, you miss Tyreek Hill. That's still a deficiency. And now you've backed up Juju and McCall Hardman. And I don't care what Juju's doing now, which he's starting to get a little bit healthier for New England. You don't have that element, right? Now, Rashee Rice, I think, looks like he should be better than him. And there's reason for optimism. And I think, to RJ's point, I think Rice and the other young receivers ought to be able to get better. But we're kind of tapping our toes on Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. There were some promising signs in this past game. But Travis Kelce, we talk about this, one of our topics, like, have they mapped out? Did the Broncos show everyone, this is how you beat him? This is how you slow him down. This is how you take Travis Kelce out. And he's not getting faster, right? Because he's still super smart. Yeah. But and these are new tackles that have had penalty problems now. We thought that was behind us. They were all back. Here are the penalty problems back in this game. So I disagree with RJ saying, like, we have no reason to believe otherwise. We have no reason to definitively say otherwise. But there is reason to say, maybe it's not going to be as good, right? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. You're right. If you put up his comment again, I think the thing that really jumps out at me is all-time offense. Yeah, that was true 5 years ago. It was true 4 years ago. It's not true this year. It's not an all-time offense this year. It's an offense trying to figure itself out. And 9 games into a season is enough time where you can sit and say, you know what? We know what these guys are now. And we know, as Eric said, what the league is like defensively. And we also know what Travis Kelce is becoming. And I think more than ever in the last couple of games, you've seen he's not going to be the guy who's going to catch a hitch, a dump off, and run 15 yards with it and break 5 tackles. Like, he's going to get tackled after 2 or 3 yards now. Is that they're not going to be able to go out and scheme up things for MBS or Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney because they have limitations right now in different ways. And so, yeah, are they still going to be a good offense? Yeah. But their superpower is Patrick Mahomes operating at a high level. No matter what you want to say about the defense and everything else, which has been great, what separates them from everybody else in the NFL is having the best player in the league playing at a high level. And when he's throwing for 185 yards, that gives everybody they're playing against a whole lot of confidence that they can win games against them. That's what I see.
Yeah. And RJ said, look, I didn't say they'd be as good. I said they would improve. You said there's no reason to believe they won't improve. We gave you a couple of reasons why they might not. But I do think, Eric, that he does have a point. There is still upside with these young receivers. They are still working Matt Nagy in as the offensive coordinator. The whole Nagy versus, listen, this is Andy Reid's offense, people. Yeah. And Matt Nagy's been there. And you carry the bags for Andy Reid in that spot, and you have a lot of responsibilities for sure. I'm not trying to minimize what they do, but this is still Andy Reid's offense. And so if something's not clicking, it's Andy's fault. I don't know if we've reached the grandpa stage where nobody can question the great Andy Reid, but it's on Andy to get this done. I do think the offense can and will get better. How much better will it get, Eric? One of the comments was, can it get to where if there's a bad day on defense, or God forbid, this team has been very healthy, which credit the training staff, credit the young players and credit youth. It's one of the youngest defenses in the league, which helps you stay healthy. But what if Chris Jones, who's not the youngest player in the league, gets hurt and they do have to go score? Can they reach down and get better offense? How much better can they get?
Or Travis Kelce.
Or Travis Kelce.
So there was one thing that Jeff said that I sort of disagree with, is like, when he says like they can't go scheme things up for MBS and Sky Moore, and I actually think the exact opposite is true. when they scheme stuff up for those guys, it works. Like the third down and short to Sky Moore, the MVS in the first play of the game, and all this kind of stuff.
But we know when it works. We don't know when it's not working, right?
Right, but where do these receivers struggle? These receivers struggle off rhythm. This team, like the Rashee Rice touchdown is a perfect example. Like when this team does something, or the Sky Moore, or sorry, not Sky Moore, the Kadarius Toney slant. When they do definitive, and we've been talking about this on the show because we're the best Chiefs podcast. When the Chiefs go 1, 2, 3, throw, it is an effective offense. My issue, and I think that, again, this is part of my thesis of like the great teams work through their problems, the bad teams, like the Chiefs have enough in their Rolodex to scheme stuff up for when they need it. We saw it in the Super Bowl last year. Pat can barely walk, and Andy just pulls everything out of the bag, and they don't punt the rest of the game. My thing is if they need to scheme up a 7-yard play to MVS, they can. They just don't. And so then we end up with this play where Patrick Mahomes has to move around the pocket, and guys like MVS and to a lesser degree Rashee Rice and Sky Moore just lack the intuition that Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce have.
They schemed up a 4th and 2 play for Sky Moore against Denver last week, and what happened? Ball got dropped. They schemed up a play for MVS in this game. Long pass. What happened? The ball gets dropped.
That wasn't schemed up. Patrick was on both of those plays. Patrick was 3 seconds in the pocket. I'm talking about it's 3rd and 7, and I need a slant, and it's 1, 2, 3, bam. I think the Chiefs can win on those plays. I just don't think that in games like this in the regular season they do that. I think that they're trying to work through the improvisation, practice in-game speed, Mahomes moving around and actually hitting guys on the run and stuff like that. That's what I see when I look at this passing offense. And I'll grant every naysayer on the Chiefs receivers, when Patrick moves out of the pocket, these guys do not understand what to do. And that is the flaw. My thing is if it gets to nut cutting time and they need to actually engineer offense, I think that they can. I think it's like when they want to be this otherworldly offense that they used to be, they can't right now.
Okay, they can't. Jeff, let me ask you this, because I think there is a little bit of, is it the receipt? Mark Borichter does the pregame show with me on A10. Says you're not doing something. Is it because you can't or you won't? Right? And can't can be a lot of things. You physically can't or you mentally can't. Right? Like that. It's not just. We know that these guys can run. We know that they've caught passes in college and stuff, but can they be part of this offense? Is it this offense can work, but Andy Reid has to change? Is he the one that won't change to either simplify things for his young receivers or won't change to, mold the offense to the talents of the receivers he does have? Or is it that he can't, that he doesn't have the answer? Listen, the game appears to be passing Bill Belichick by. Nobody has a problem in Kansas City saying that. There are lots of people in Boston, I'm sure, that are pointing at other things that are the thing in Boston. They all say is, well, it's Bill, the GM, is the problem, right? He can still scheme. At some point, the game will pass Andy Reid by. Are we seeing maybe it not passing him by, but defenses have caught up to him? He doesn't have, the answer for everything.
Well, I think if you look at the teams around the league that are having high-level success throwing the football, I'm talking about getting explosive plays, highlight reel plays, whatever you want to call it. Generally, they have receivers who are very high-level players. So if it's Philadelphia with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, or Cincinnati with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the Niners when Deebo Samuel's healthy and Ayuk, you can go up and down the list. You're going to Stephon Diggs and Buffalo. Those guys are going to make plays for you. And so that is problem one. It's like they have talented guys. They don't have otherworldly talented guys. So they're not going to, when Eric's talking about those kind of plays that you're talking about, just going 1, 2, 3, throw, you still have to have guys who win and can take a 5-yard pass and turn it into a 15-yard game. Like those guys, Tony can do it a little bit, but the other guys can't. So that's the first problem. Second problem is that he has so much faith in all these guys.
Before you move off that, are you saying Rashee Rice can't?
He could do it, but they don't go to him. The problem with Rice, that's leading into my second point,
Okay.
And I think the reason Rice can't get more opportunities is because Andy wants to involve so many different players. And Rice, to me, seems more like a catch and run type guy. Like, he's not a refined route runner. And once you begin to say we're going to do X, Y, and Z, we're going to simplify things. That allows the defense to say, okay, we're going to have this coverage, or we're going to assign this guy to this person. It takes away some of the mystery, some of the surprise factor, which is what makes Andy Reid's offense so great. You never know where guys are going to line up, what they're going to do at those positions. If you begin to make it more, all right, this is who we are, this is who's running these routes, it's a lot easier for defenses to lock in on you. And so I agree with you. I think you probably do have to start saying Rashee Rice is the kind of player who we can throw the ball to and he can run for 15, 20 yards. We should do more of that. Who else can we do that with? I don't know. But I do think simplification would help. But also having better receivers would help.
Yeah.
What do you see, Eric? I thought the play where Patrick Mahomes ran for a first down on 3rd and 8, and there was a holding penalty. It was 3rd and 18. He took off again, got 16 yards and tackled. They showed, I don't really get a chance to get to the all 22 till Wednesday in my week. So I don't know if it usually comes out today. I haven't seen it yet, but that was one where they gave kind of the all 22 on the television broadcast, and they showed, look at this big open field. That's where he's running to. That also, and I know they're trying to get 18 yards, and every fan, Jesus, goes nuts if you don't go 18 yards beforehand. But generally speaking, you leave somebody in there to okay, if they send everything deep, let's try to catch a guy on the run. He can turn upfield and run for the first down. Mm-hmm. Is that a flaw? Is the route combinations of Andy Reid maybe not quite as dynamic, or receivers are not running the right routes? They're not reading it the right way. Somebody should have broke off underneath, and they didn't do it because, again, they can't figure it out.
I think it's probably a little of both. I'd be remiss. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody's not there. That should be. It also doesn't surprise me. And this gets back to the point I had at the very beginning of the show. Maybe there is a little bit of, let's try to go for a big play. If we don't have a big play, we have an all-pro punter and we have a great defense. And so let's live to fight another day type of thing. This team 2 or 3 years, again, I hate saying this, but 2 or 3 years ago, the team would have been desperate to either pick up the first down or pick up a ton of yards because they knew their defense needed all the field position they could get, and they needed, to be out the field. I think this, again, maybe I'm galaxy brain, but from what I'm hearing, I do ask a lot of questions, and my impression is that they're using these regular season games to work out some of the kinks and all of that. And this is, that is an example, I think, Soren, a very good one by you, of this is not necessarily an optimal play if it were Super Bowl 58 and they're trying to pick up a first down or trying to extend the game. But this is an optimal play to see, hey, can we get one of these receivers to finally improvise on a play and get, and have Patrick find him? And the answer is, right now is no, these receivers are not good enough and they don't have the intuition enough. And that's, that's plain. I mean, that's 100% the case.
We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, the nationally recognized and full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor that makes your parking lot problems disappear. They've been doing it since 1994. Why risk accidents and liability in your parking lot? Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible. Find Gann online right now at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Make sure you tell them you heard about them here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Okay, so let's quantify it. Scale of 1 to 10. Your level of concern with the offense is what, Jeff?
6. Leaning towards 7, but I'll say 6 just because Mahomes will keep me from 7.
Okay. And then your level of optimism that it will improve to whatever level is necessary. I think we'd all agree it might be good enough to win right now, right? If they get the right kind of game. But your optimism that it will improve significantly on a scale of 1 to 10 is what?
3.
Okay. Eric, same scale, 1 to 10. Your level of concern with the offense is what?
5. I'm similar to Jeff. I'm not going to it's not duckies and bunnies around here. These are real issues. I agree with Jeff's conclusion, though, that Mahomes makes it so it's hard for me to get above that. And then I think
what?
I'm at 6 on them improving.
Okay, so more bullish on the improving. I am on a level of concern. I am concerned. We're now, like, the Charger game was a step forward, but the Chargers just seem to be doofuses when it comes to doing things. So, like, I know somebody's like, "Hey, they got open against the Chargers." I know. I don't know why. Because they're dumb. I don't know what they do with Derwin James. I can't figure out what boy genius Brandon Staley's doing when he plays the Chiefs. But I would say that I'm level of concern a 5. No, it's a 6. I'd say level of concern is a 6. My optimism is probably a 4. I feel pretty comfortable that there is going to be improvement, but I think they're going to have to do it on the defensive side of the ball all year, right? Like, I don't want to see them start taking on injuries and still try to carry, because I don't, and I'll tell you the other thing, and I would be more optimistic if they could, and it's been said a million times, we talk about it every freaking week. They still can't figure out short yardage.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is a goddamn,
Leader of cola.
Yeah, they got nothing. I mean, they are looking at another language when they see 3rd and 1. And, and Andy, and I'll tell you what I didn't like was Andy getting defensive with Adam Teicher. And Adam Teicher asked him afterwards, "Hey, you chose to throw on that 3rd and 1." And he said, and I think Andy certainly respects Adam Teicher, but I think Adam can get under his skin a little. A lot of times because Adam's the one of the handful of guys that'll really hit him with some stuff. But he's like, "Yeah, if we'd have run, you'd have asked why we didn't throw." Yes, because you're supposed to get 1 yard. I mean, like, that's not a shot. And
let me ask you this, Soren.
But that shows a little bit of. I think Andy Reid should have been better about that, and that shows to me he's a little bit worried. He's not coming up with the answer week after week after week.
When they lined up on that play, I sat there and watched it. And I'm wondering if you had the same response to Eric. They're throwing the ball to Kelce. It was so obvious that run was off the table. There was no chance of running the football.
The Dolphins,
as soon as they snapped it just blew up. What's that?
The Dolphins also just daring them to run a sneak is something that, like, the guy's got him. Like, I love Patrick Mahomes, my favorite player in the league. He's my favorite player of all time. Guys got him nut up and sneak the ball one time.
They're getting to a point. If Andy Reid, listen, maybe they can go all the way to the 1 seed without running a quarterback sneak, but it has to be back into the equation come playoff time, because they suck at it. And you're right. They are not putting anybody over the center. They literally could snap and Patrick Mahomes could fall forward for 3 yards.
I know Mitchell Schwartz is a phenomenal guest for us. He kind of defended. Trey Smith sucks this year. Like, they don't get the 2021 Chiefs. Got to, like, we talk about the short yardage being the moon to this team. It wasn't in 2021.
Yeah, but isn't part of that because if somebody lines up, if he's uncovered, or at least just has, somebody's in the gap and not head up on him, then he can smash down on the nose guard and be the double team and blow somebody over. Everyone goes, "Oh, look at him just blowing it open." Now he's got to line up with a guy head up. I mean, it should be Creed Humphreys smashing somebody because nobody's over him.
But what I mean is, like, just overall, neither one of those guys. I mean, both. If you look, and again, PFF is not perfect. But I think offensive and defensive line play does really well. Both Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey have not graded as well as they have in the past. Like, this is not something that, I mean, we've come accustomed to both of those players being better than what they played at so far this year. And that's a problem. Like, they can't.
Here's an analogy I'll make that I think it may not be the perfect analogy, but for people who are old enough to remember this, Soren is, maybe not Eric. Remember Mike Tyson first started boxing? And he walked into a ring and people were beaten.
Oh, yeah.
You just knew there's no way anybody is going to last around with this guy because it was that level of intimidation. That's how the Chiefs were on offense for the first 4 or 5 years with Mahomes. And then all of a sudden people thought, I can hang in here with this guy. And then he had to start boxing, and it became a lot harder. That's what I feel is happening with the Chiefs right now. They're starting to box, and it's a lot harder because and also they know they're used to knocking people out. You can't tell me that it's not frustrating for them to not feel like we just can't go out here and go up and down the field like we used to every week.
Well, there was a really good comment in the chat about patience, like, and how Patrick is like, he's getting impatient in some of these drives. Like, some of those interceptions are impatience. And I do think it's like, God, this used to be, you remember the Atlanta preseason game where he threw the 80-yard or 60-yard air yard pass to Tyreek. And it's like, those don't happen anymore, right? For better or worse. To Jeff's point, these teams make the Chiefs methodically do their homework every single drive. And, Pat's used to being the smart kid that doesn't have to study, right? And so I think that's, not to say that he can't do it, and he did it masterfully last year, but Jeff's 100% right. Like, this is a frustrating year for them because they're not able to just sort of haymaker the other team as much as they used to. They have to body blow other teams. And like I said, I think now it's probably going to end up working out because now you don't have to pay Trey Smith or something like that. But like Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey are not playing as good a football. They're not playing terribly. They're not playing as good a football until as they have been.
I think the hope is that Andy Reid is holding back, that he's like, listen, we're all about championships. We don't need to have some, we'll play enough to try to get that 1 seed. I don't think there's any doubt that they would want the 1 seed. And we've got that position right now, and I'm going to hold some stuff back. I hope that's the case. I don't think the NFL works that way. I think more likely, I like what the frustration part to me seems like they keep trying to score 30 points on each drive. And they were a team possessed going down that field in that first drive. They're like, screw you, we're scoring. And I think Andy Reid would have gone for it on 4th down on that. I think he was like, okay, we got the ball first. We're going to put 7 on your ass. Here we go. But then after that, they keep wanting to do it again. When they can't do it once, then they're trying to get 14 the next time, and I think it's bogging down. And I think Andy Reid might be stuck in that part again. And the question is, to your analogy, Jeff, of the boxing match, if Vander's standing toe-to-toe with you, are you going to go ahead hunting all the time? Or are you going to keep your defense up, protect yourself, and work the body and beat this man down over the long haul? They've got to keep hammering away. And I think also, listen, I appreciate that Pacheco is not just being – I always thought Jamal Charles got too many carries. Now, the offense wasn't as overall talented, and you didn't have Patrick Mahomes. And so I know what Andy Reid said, Jesus, it's the only way I can get there, so I'm going to keep feeding him the ball, throwing it to him and running it. But there's no second back.
No.
And he was getting knocked around in that. I don't want him to have any more touches. They could really use another back to step up.
Now, we did talk about McKinnon, and we did talk about all of his receiving touchdowns last year came second half of the year. He did have a receiving touchdown on Sunday. So there is a little bit of that, but they don't have a sledgehammer. They don't have a Thomas Jones on this team. Like and Thomas Jones sucked when he was with the Chiefs, but at least he's going to Thomas Jones is going to hit the other team in the ribs a few times. Right. So I think that whether that's LaMichael Pirine or, Clyde is irredeemable at this point, but they do need to get somebody who's willing. Ronald Jones is available, isn't he? We got to let's revive that.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette was. But the problem is that, again, when you have that issue running the football, linebackers take deeper drops, safeties take deeper drops, the zones get smaller holes to throw into, smaller windows to throw into. It just exacerbates everything.
Well, and I wrote this up at Sumer Sports. I do a weekly column. NFL teams are better at stopping the run with fewer men in the box this year than they were last year. It's and it's pretty astounding. When you look at most of the efficiency gains in offense is not giving up big plays and teams being able to stop the run with 6 or 7 men in the box. And the Chiefs are, it's good that Pacheco can deliver a blow because I think that helps, that situation. But interior offensive linemen, including Trey, including Humphrey, not being able to win against small, light boxes is one of the reasons offense around the league is down, and not, and microcosm Kansas City there.
Well, he's also not a factor in the pass game. He's not as big enough a factor in the passing game. So when you're throwing the football, you really got 4 guys that matter.
Yeah.
With free consultations, no commissions, and in-house crews, every project coming with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt and Concrete keeps your parking lot safer, helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Make sure your parking lot is the first impression you want to give with your business. For your clients, for your customers, let Gann Asphalt and Concrete take care of all your parking lot problems. GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Jeff, let's talk about the positive side. The defense is a positive, right? We go round and round because the great show ain't the great show anymore, but they are hell on wheels on defense. Let's talk about the defensive backfield. 8 catches, 68 yards for Tyreek Hill overall holding the Dolphins to under 300 yards. Does it start with McDuffie? Is McDuffie a Pro Bowl corner right now?
I think he is. And I liked him coming in. I don't think he's not Sauce Gardner or, someone of that caliber, Patrick Surtain, but he's really, really good at playing his role. I love small guys who tackles. He's very feisty. He has a knack for knocking the football out. He's done that 2 or 3 times now in key situations. I was trying to think of someone he reminds me of because of his stature and the way he plays. He reminds me a lot of Antoine Winfield, his dad. Remember his dad? He was a smaller corner, but he tackled. He would get sacks. He wasn't a big turnover guy, but he was always in the right. And he was a Pro Bowl player, for a long time in this league.
It took him forever to make the Pro Bowl because he didn't get turnovers, but eventually people realized how brilliant he was.
Yeah, and so that's who he reminds me of. And so they play him, and a great blitzer too. He's turned into a really good blitzer off the corner. So they know who he is. He played within himself. He's not a big talker out there from what I can see. He just goes about his business. So, yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he got in. It's a tough spot to get in at, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got some love.
Yeah, if he gets in, it's an accomplishment. Jeff rattled off all the guys that are there. There are great corners in the AFC, and if he cracks that group, I mean, it's a hell of an accomplishment for him. Is he a Pro Bowler for you, Eric?
Yeah, my former employer, PFF, put him on the first team All-Pro at the halfway point. All the things Jeff said is true. I also think, and this I'm going to laud Brett Veach because I know last week everybody on Chiefs Twitter wanted to, talk about Brett Veach's viability, but who they started at nickel on Sunday? They started Shamari Connor, and again it was one of those where they played a 3 safety nickel, and that was because both Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed are good enough corners to play on the outside of the defense, and both corners are good enough to play on the inside of the defense. And so wherever, we talk about, again, I keep going back to the past, but I mean, you remember the Mike Williamses of the world that used to give the Chiefs fits in matchups, or Keenan Allen back in the day. This is a team that when the inside guys are smaller and shiftier, they can play Trent in the inside. When the inside guys are more the Marquise Colston types, they can play Sneed on the inside. And it's I think it's a masterful usage of, their resources to be able to build a defense that can win in a bunch of different ways. And that starts with the versatility of McDuffie, and it ends with the versatility of Sneed. And that makes their defense really hard to beat because there's not really a matchup where you look at the opponent and you're like, well, sorry, the Chiefs are going to have to get lucky in this one because they're overmatched. They can kind of mix and match to where they're the bookmaker and the other team's the better.
By the way, we had the question, did FAU get any snaps? 4. He had 4 snaps.
But by the way, is that good because they don't need them?
It's not a disaster yet. Listen, I think he'll probably have a bigger role if Chris Jones is gone next year. But listen, you'd love for him to be getting 12 sacks, but it's not. They're second in the NFL in sacks. Now some teams have had buys and they haven't. That's going to change after this. So I keep hearing that stat thrown around. Let's hold on and wait till everybody's back.
Going into the week, they're top in sack rate too. They're getting pressure on the quarterback.
Sure. Mike Dana's success, I'm sure, has hurt his opportunities.
Mike Dana's been fantastic, and the Chiefs will be happy to watch Mike Dana have success. FAU come along and probably, frankly, wave goodbye to Mike Dana and get the draft pick compensation and free agency. They'll probably make a play, but if somebody's going to pay him a lot, that's probably how that'll go down when he goes. But, yeah, they're getting pressure. There's no negative on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, right? and last year at this time, Sam McDowell, I know, is on your show a lot, and we really respect him. At this time last year, talking about how bad literally bad George Karlaftis was. He was a replacement level player. Down the stretch, of course, was very good. He's been even better this year. I think when you look at Felix, I think that there's 2 positives to this, right? It's the development, right, with Cullen, and the fact that they developed Karlaftis from, at this point in the game last year, kind of a replacement level player to a real good player now. And the second part is, unlike Karlaftis, this team doesn't need Felix to play. Yeah. And so there's the sort of second part of it, which is he's going through growing pains, but it's not affecting the Chiefs because he's not on the field, which is it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think ideally he ends up being like Jermaine Johnson for the Jets.
Yes.
Or even what Miles Murphy's doing with the Bengals, where he's getting the growing pains out of the way without the pains, the on-field pains.
Yeah, listen, there's no problem here. So, and I do think, you mentioned the Brett Veach side of things. I'm not sure why there's so much angst. I think it's a vocal minority. I got one guy who calls.
What is the angst? I don't know what this is.
Well, I saw a great cartoon that showed a picture of Brett Veach, and here he is, and then here's Brett Veach at his retirement press conference after 5 championships, and the first question is the guy goes, "Why didn't you draft DK Metcalf?"
Yeah.
Right, like that's like the thing that's hanging around right now. The receivers aren't as good as people like, and so the DK Metcalf thing, who by the way hasn't been that great the last 2 or 3 years anyway, it is that's the problem. Is like it's not perfection, but when you look at the defense, I don't know how you can't be impressed with the drafting that this organization has done. So I don't get it, and I think Rashee Rice shows a lot of promise, and the draft is not a 100% game. So I think people need to back off on that for sure.
And most of those guys are second and third day picks too. There's no bunch of first rounders out there.
Like if you really want to judge because they're saying, I think specifically it's the wide receiver, like, oh, he's bad at drafting wide receivers. Well, if you think about, like, he's been the GM drafting players since 18, you think about Hardman. I know people will bristle at this, but like statistically, Hardman played exactly to his draft position, right? Like if you look at the draft curves, Hardman played to the 56th pick. Now I know there's a trade and stuff, so it technically wasn't worth it, but like he wasn't an embarrassment at that pick, Hardman. And then, you go and obviously Sky Moore's had a rough one. But then Rashee Rice has been pretty good. Like I don't get this angst. And I also think I'm like, well, if you fail, like just the way it goes, if you hit a normal number of your draft picks, well, if they're all hitting on defense, then you have to expect regression to hit somewhere around the roster. And if that's wide receiver, so be it. Like to expect this guy to hit on every single pick, I think is folly, right?
Yeah, nobody does, for crying out loud. And I think, I think it's the fact that the one thing this fan base is not, they've become accustomed to winning. So now they've become accustomed to the offense being the best offense in football. And so that's a point of pride. So they get pissed when that's not happening, but they are not accustomed to what rosters look like when you have a $500 million quarterback who the full weight of his contract is now pressing on your cap. I mean, what they did last year, he's the most expensive player ever.
By 4 percentage points.
That's not the norm. Last year was not what's supposed to happen. History tells us last year was not supposed to happen because he was too freaking expensive. And yet they won anyway. And that's because of the talent they put around him at a very cheap price. Listen, I want to get real quick to a review. Let's finish with this. First half, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment. Jeff, you want to start? Which one do you want to start with? Surprise or disappointment? Surprise, positive, disappointment.
Yeah. I'll take surprise. I'll take George Karlaftis. I mean, he's really stepped up. I mean, I was thinking about McDuffie, but I feel like he was a pretty solid player last year. Karlaftis has really been a revelation in terms of how he's come along. I saw him as a guy who's going to have success with Chris Jones on the field. Now I see him as a guy who probably will be okay without Chris Jones around, and somebody who'll probably be a pretty good player and earn a second contract. I like him a lot.
Okay. Eric, you're surprised to the positive slant?
Yep. My biggest surprise is not one of the 2022 draft picks has regressed. Preseason, I said, look, McDuffie was fabulous as a rookie. Watson, Joshua Williams, guys like that. Expect a little regression. Be a little careful. Don't anoint these guys as Hall of Famers yet. And you look across that draft class, to Jeff's point, Karlaftis, McDuffie, Leo Chanel's taken another step. Brian Cook's taken another step. No one in that draft class has taken a step backwards, and that is a very good surprise, right? That's a Brett Veach drafted these guys, and they were all good for rookies, and that's why they won a Super Bowl. I think they're all legitimately good, period, now, and that's a positive in my opinion.
I'm going to go with the surprise is Brian Cook. Listen, when he played last year, I know he had the big play in the Super Bowl and knocking the ball away and ended up being intercepted. Right. He knocked it away. And
They went the AFC Championship game, right?
AFC Championship game, he
Yeah.
knocked it away,
So,
and it ended up intercepted. When it was like, I'm like, this is the big hitter, right? That was his MO coming out of Cincinnati, is that this guy's a headhunter. He'll pop you. And I'm like, I really was like, good Lord, did they just, is this a special teamer that they spent a second round draft pick on? Did they just go, we got all these picks, we can do it. Let's go get this heavy hitter for special teams. And then when I heard he's going to be the captain, he's going to be the guy calling the signs for the secondary, I was like, oh man, that, again, not what I heard he was coming out of Cincinnati. And then, love talking to him. I mean, he is fantastic to talk to, insightful, can actually have a rational football conversation without going, here's the whole game plan, which I know Andy Reid's terrified of all the time, and, tells you some good football things. And I've just been so impressed. And I think his tackle against the Jets on Breece Hall is a whole nother side of him. And I asked him about it, that next, during the week. And I said, listen, that wasn't your MO. He goes, nope, it wasn't. He goes, I like the big hits, but that's not my job there. And that's a guy who gets it, right? Like, I'd kind of like to hear some of that maybe from some of the wideouts. You're like, okay, that guy gets the whole concept of what's going on. Brian Cook's knowledge of the game, his all-around play as a safety, I'm really impressed. I did not see that much football, that kind of football instincts coming from him. Let's flip it around. Biggest disappointment, Jeff, is what?
Yeah, I want to say all the receivers, but I'll narrow in on one specific that is especially close to your heart, and that would be Sky Moore. That would be the sky is not the limit here. He is, I was expecting huge things, a much better season. I just don't see where he fits in his. I don't see where he fits in his offense, and I think he could be a better player in a different offense, but for what they're asking him to do here, he's nowhere close to being what McCole Hardman was for this team. And McCole Hardman was not obviously somebody who blew it out of the water during his time here. So I'll take him.
All right, Eric, where do you go next?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a receiver, but a different one. And this is a guy that I've obviously advocated for. I still think he's obviously useful in the offense. And like when he's on the field, they do better than when he's off the field. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been I thought the AFC Championship game showed that he had something to his game that was different than just being the runoff guy and just being the take the top off the guy. And like you go back and look, and like obviously like my research that I published at the MIT Sloan conference like really liked him and really showed how he opened up the offense in Green Bay. He's a lot worse than he was in Green Bay, and he's not like. And he could come out and have a good game. He has it in him, but this team needed their veteran wide receiver to step up and earn $10 million this year, and he's been a flat out bust. Like it's just what it is.
I can't give it to Sky Moore because I've never seen it in Sky Moore, so I'm not disappointed. This is what I thought it was. I'm not going to give it to MVS because MVS is what the back of his football card says he is. He's Donnie Avery. He's half the price of Sammy Watkins, who never put up great numbers either. And so I don't think they ever thought I think they said it because that's what they want to say and that's what receivers want to hear. But I think they knew exactly what they got with MVS, and I don't think he's been bad. I think other things are going wrong. That's like nobody's a threat underneath. Why would he be open deep? Sauce Gardner covered him against the Jets. I mean, Jesus, and nobody thought he was going to just go smoke Darrelle Revis. So I think he's been him. The problem is around him. And I think, and somebody put it up, I posted it. Now I'll see if I can find it real quick. But for me, here it is. Rhett, I'm with Rhett. It's the offensive line. Like, come on. Like, listen, I do think you got to practice the way you want to play. So if you want to be smash mouth on 3rd and 1, then practice some smash mouth. Get better at it. But there is an element of want to, and they're not as good as they should be inside. Maybe they're handcuffed because Andy Reid won't just run a sneak and let them wedge forward and do what most offensive lines do when they want to get powerful. And they get too cute, and maybe they're frustrated. I'm a little bit disappointed in the tackles. I'm still fine with it. I still think they made the right moves. I have a better appreciation for Andrew Wiley this year because I think Donovan Smith looks kind of Andrew Wiley-esque over there on the left side. But I'm disappointed in the penalties. I really thought Andy Heck and Andy Reid's schemes would take some of those penalties away. I still think they can be better and have been better at times. But the frustration in that short yardage running and just overall, I've seen Creed Humphrey on roller skates a couple of times this year where I'm like, dude, like you're 330 and you're this wrestler. Like how are guys getting leverage on you? And we've seen some low snaps out of Creed Humphrey. I think overall the offensive line read a lot about how good they are in the offseason. Now, the good news is I feel confident that there are a lot more there for them to get. And that part can get better. I don't know if it will, but I think it can. We'll see. Overall, though, 7-2, 1 seed. I mean, I had them 12-5. I can't be pissed at where they are. Are you pissed at where they are, Jeff?
I had them 11-6. They're about where I thought they would be. I mean, it's 7-2 is look. They're right in the running to get where they want to get to.
7-2. You okay with Eric? What'd you have them? You had 13-4, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they have a top 5 most difficult schedule moving forward after the bye. So that's something to worry about. But no, they've done really well. I mean, honestly, to think about the fact that if they just literally roll the ball out against Denver and they'd be 8-1 and games up here is kind of crazy. They usually struggle with the Chargers. They usually struggle, and they made mincemeat out of teams in different ways. They covered against the Jaguars. They covered against the Chargers, teams that they've not covered against in the past. So I'm optimistic about this team, and I think that they've overachieved in the first half of the year.
All right, listen up. We're proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They can literally help you with any problem you have with your parking lot. If you own a business, run a business, let Gann Asphalt and Concrete make sure you make a great first impression and last impression, by the way, with any and all customers. They've been solving parking lot problems since 1994 in Kansas City. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Make sure you tell them you heard about them right here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Consumer Sports, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.